I helped my neighbor build her new bed. Then she pushed me onto it. Let's see if it squeaks. The first thing I heard was the sound of wood cracking beneath me. 1 second, I was standing beside my neighbor, laughing about how badly we had assembled her new bed. The next, she had pushed me backward onto the mattress, landed beside me, and whispered with a mischievous smile, "Let's see if it squeaks." But neither of us knew that a few seconds later, the joke would turn into one of the most honest moments of our lives. If you believe kindness can change someone's life, that second chances are real, and that sometimes the people living closest to us need our help more than they know how to ask for it, please like this story, share it with someone who needs a little hope, and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories. My name is Daniel, and until that afternoon, I had spent most of my life believing that being useful was the same thing as being happy. I was 34, lived alone in a small rented house, and worked repairing furniture for a local shop. I knew how to fix broken chairs, loose cabinets, crooked tables, and almost anything made of wood. What I didn't know was how to fix the parts of people that couldn't be repaired with a screwdriver. My neighbor, Emma, had moved into the house next door 6 months earlier. She was around my age, quiet without being unfriendly, and carried herself like someone who had learned not to expect much from anyone. We exchanged polite greetings whenever we saw each other, but our conversations rarely lasted more than a minute. Then one rainy Saturday morning, a delivery truck stopped outside her house. 2 men carried a large flat box through her front door. I watched from my porch as they struggled with it, nearly dropping it on the steps. Emma eventually paid them and stood staring at the box as though it had personally offended her. A few minutes later, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, she stood there holding a cup of coffee in one hand and looking embarrassed. She told me she had bought a bed but had no idea how to assemble it. She had seen me carrying tools before and wondered if I could help. I agreed. The bed was supposed to take an hour. It took nearly 3. The instructions were terrible, half the screws looked identical, and one wooden panel seemed determined to destroy our patience. We made mistakes, took pieces apart, put them back together, and laughed every time something went wrong. For the first time since I had met Emma, I saw her genuinely smile. Not the polite smile she gave neighbors. A real one. As we worked, I slowly learned why she had moved into the neighborhood. Her marriage had ended badly. She had spent years believing that if she worked harder, apologized more, and stayed quieter, everything would eventually become okay. It hadn't. She had left with 2 suitcases, a box of photographs, and enough courage to start over. She told me she had spent months sleeping on a mattress on the floor because buying a proper bed felt like admitting she intended to stay. That sentence stayed with me. Because sometimes people don't buy furniture when they're hurting. They don't hang pictures. They don't unpack boxes. They don't plant flowers. They keep everything temporary because some part of them is still waiting for life to fall apart again. I understood that more than I wanted to admit. My father had died 2 years earlier. After that, I stopped visiting friends. I stopped answering invitations. I worked, went home, ate alone, and convinced myself that loneliness was simply what adulthood looked like. Emma was different. She had been hurt, but she was trying again. By late afternoon, the bed finally stood upright in the center of her bedroom. It wasn't perfect. One corner was slightly crooked, and the headboard had a tiny scratch. But Emma looked at it like it was a palace. She ran her hand across the wooden frame and smiled. Then she suddenly looked at me. There was something different in her expression. She stepped closer, put both hands against my shoulders, and before I could understand what she was doing, she gently pushed me backward. I landed on the mattress. She climbed onto the edge beside me, laughing. Then came the line that would become unforgettable. "Let's see if it squeaks." I laughed so hard that I nearly fell off the bed. We bounced once. Nothing happened. We bounced again. A tiny squeak came from somewhere beneath us. We stared at each other. Then we both burst out laughing. For a few minutes, we were just two adults behaving like children who had discovered a secret. But when the laughter faded, something changed. Emma remained beside me, staring at the ceiling. She quietly admitted that she couldn't remember the last time she had laughed without feeling guilty afterward. I turned toward her. She explained that after her divorce, she had become afraid of happiness. Whenever something good happened, she expected something terrible to follow. She had convinced herself that caring about people was dangerous because eventually they left. I didn't know what to say. So I told her the truth. I said I was afraid of the same thing. My father had been the person I called whenever anything went wrong. After he died, I discovered how terrifying silence could be. I had spent 2 years avoiding people because I couldn't bear becoming attached to someone only to lose them again. Emma turned her head toward me. For once, neither of us smiled. There was no joke. No teasing. No pretending. Just two lonely people lying on a new bed, admitting that they were scared. That afternoon became the beginning of something neither of us expected. Emma started knocking on my door more often. Sometimes she brought coffee. Sometimes I helped her carry groceries. Sometimes we sat on the porch after work and talked until the streetlights came on. She slowly unpacked her house. First came the photographs. Then the books. Then the plants. One evening, I noticed she had planted flowers along the walkway. She told me she had finally decided she wasn't leaving. I told her I was glad. But life has a strange way of testing the things we begin to love. 3 months later, Emma received a phone call that changed everything. Her former husband had contacted her. He wanted to meet. He claimed he had changed. He apologized. He promised he understood what he had done wrong. Emma was shaken. I could see the old fear returning to her face. She asked me what I thought she should do. I wanted to tell her not to go. I wanted to protect her. But I knew that wasn't my decision. So I told her something my father once told me: forgiveness doesn't mean reopening a door that nearly destroyed you. Sometimes forgiveness simply means walking away without carrying hatred with you. Emma went to the meeting. She came home 3 hours later. She was crying. But this time, they weren't tears of heartbreak. She told me she had finally realized that she didn't miss him. She missed the person she had hoped he would become. And those were two completely different things. That night, she sat beside me on the porch. She thanked me for never trying to rescue her. I told her I hadn't done anything special. She shook her head and said that was exactly what made it special. I had simply stayed. I didn't pressure her. I didn't judge her. I didn't ask for anything in return. I had helped her build a bed. Somehow, along the way, we had helped each other build something much more important. Trust. Weeks passed. One evening, Emma knocked on my door holding 2 cups of coffee. She smiled and asked if I remembered the first day we assembled her bed. I laughed and said I remembered the squeak. She laughed too. Then she became quiet. She told me that the bed had become her favorite thing in the house, not because it was beautiful, but because it reminded her of the first day she stopped feeling completely alone. I didn't know what to say. So I told her that, for me, the bed represented something too. It was the first place where I had laughed freely since my father died. Emma reached for my hand. Neither of us pulled away. There was no dramatic kiss. No grand declaration. Just 2 people sitting beneath a porch light, holding hands while the world continued moving around them. And somehow, that was more beautiful than anything I could have imagined. A year later, Emma's house looked completely different. The empty rooms were filled with photographs, plants, books, and warmth. And my house was different too. Because Emma had become part of my life. Not because either of us had saved the other. We hadn't. We had simply reminded each other that being hurt didn't mean we were broken forever. Sometimes kindness doesn't arrive as a miracle. Sometimes it looks like holding a flashlight while someone searches for the right screw. Sometimes it looks like carrying a heavy box. Sometimes it looks like coffee on a rainy morning. Sometimes it looks like sitting silently beside someone who doesn't know what to say. And sometimes, somehow, it begins with helping a neighbor build a bed. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who might need this reminder, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach people who may be quietly going through their own difficult chapter. And before we reach the ending, I want you to leave a comment with this sentence: kindness is staying when someone expects you to leave. Because you never really know what someone is carrying behind a closed door. The person who seems distant may be lonely. The person who never asks for help may be afraid of being rejected. The person who stopped believing in love may simply need someone to show them that kindness can exist without conditions. Emma and I never forgot that first afternoon. Every once in a while, when one of us mentioned the bed, we'd laugh about the ridiculous squeak that started everything. But the truth was, the bed never really squeaked the way we expected. What made the sound that day wasn't the bed. It was two broken hearts finally beginning to move again. And sometimes, that's all a second chance really is. Not a perfect beginning. Not a perfect person. Just two imperfect people deciding that maybe, after everything they've survived, they deserve to laugh again.